2 in the morning. The espresso machine hissed like an angry cat as I fixed my third cup of the night. Insomnia had become my closest companion lately, more reliable than my wife of 15 years. Linda was supposed to be at another company retreat, the kind that required weekend overtime and conveniently placed hotels an hour outside town. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop. Linda's name lit up the screen. Finally. "Hey, babe," I said, stirring sugar into the bitter brew. "How's the corporate bonding going?" A man's voice answered, deep, confident, amused. "She's busy right now, Sam. She'll call you back later." The spoon clinked against ceramic as my hand stopped moving. In the background, I heard Linda's laugh, that specific giggle she used to reserve for me, back when we were young and stupid and thought love conquered everything. "Greg?" I recognized the voice now. Her boss, the golden boy with the corner office and the BMW that cost more than my annual income. "Yeah, that's right. Listen, maybe you should just keep her," I said, my voice steady as granite. "She's your problem now." I ended the call and set the phone down with surgical precision. The silence that followed felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane, that perfect calm before everything goes to pieces. Every streetlight in this faded New England city has heard a secret, and now I knew mine. My wife of 15 years, mother of my daughter, was tangled up with her boss in some hotel room while I sat in our kitchen like a fool, waiting for a call that would never come. The rain outside painted streaks down our windows, each drop catching the neon glow from Murphy's bar across the street. This whole neighborhood was full of stories like mine, working-class dreams that got chipped away one disappointment at a time. Triple-decker apartments with peeling paint, corner stores with bulletproof glass, and people like me who thought they could build something permanent in a world designed for demolition. I owned a tattoo parlor downtown, nothing fancy, but it paid the bills. Ink and Steel sat between a pawn shop and a Chinese restaurant that had been there since the Carter administration. My clients were bikers, college kids, office workers looking for something real in their sanitized lives. I was good with my hands, always had been. Linda used to say I could make art out of anything. That was before her career took off like a rocket ship, leaving me behind in the gravity well of ordinary life. I walked to my home office and powered up the old laptop. Linda always forgot to log out of her Gmail on shared devices, a bad habit that was about to become my advantage. Her inbox opened like a treasure chest of betrayal, messages stretching back months, photos I definitely wasn't supposed to see, plans for weekend getaways that had nothing to do with corporate retreats. "Quarterly review my rear end," I muttered, scrolling through conversations that made my stomach turn. The most recent thread was a masterpiece of deception. Linda and Greg planning their whole affair like a military operation. Hotel reservations, cover stories, even discussions about what to do if I got suspicious. They called me the tattoo guy, like I was some kind of pet they had to work around. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My finger hovered over the forward button. With one click, I could send this entire conversation to everyone in Linda's contact list. Her friends, her family, her coworkers. Let them see exactly who they'd been defending all these years. Click. The email whooshed into cyberspace, carrying 15 years of marriage with it. Within minutes, Linda's phone would start buzzing with messages from confused friends and horrified relatives. Her perfect reputation would crumble like wet cardboard. "Dad?" I spun around. Flora stood in the doorway, my 14-year-old daughter with Linda's dark hair and my stubborn chin. She wore an oversized t-shirt and had that rumpled look kids get when they can't sleep. "Hey, kiddo," I said, closing the laptop. "What are you doing up?" "Couldn't sleep. I heard voices." She studied my face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Is Mom okay? The question hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. How do you tell your daughter that her mother is busy destroying everything you built together? That the woman who reads her bedtime stories and helps with homework is currently wrapped around her boss in some cheap hotel? She's fine, I lied. Just work stuff. Flora nodded, but I could see the doubt in her expression. Kids always know when the adults are lying. They can smell deception like smoke in the air. Dad, are you and Mom going to get divorced? The question hung between us like a loaded weapon. I wanted to give her some comforting platitude, tell her everything would work out fine. But looking at her serious face, I realized she deserved better than another lie. I don't know, Flora. Maybe. She walked over and hugged me, her thin arms wrapping around my shoulders. For a moment, I felt like maybe I could handle whatever came next. Then she pulled back and looked at me with an expression far too mature for her age. Mom's been acting weird lately, taking phone calls in private, staying late at work all the time. I'm not stupid, Dad. I know you're not. She kissed my forehead and headed back to her room. Try to get some sleep, okay? I sat alone in the dark office, listening to the rain and wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Tomorrow, Linda would wake up to find her secret life exposed to the world. She'd be angry, humiliated, desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Donnie, who owned the boxing gym where I worked out my frustrations. Saw your wife's car at the Riverside Hotel? Thought you should know. Too late for that, I thought, but I appreciated the gesture. Donnie had been watching my back since high school, when we were both scrappy kids with more attitude than sense. He'd seen me through bar fights, business troubles, and now apparently the collapse of my marriage. I typed back, already know. Thanks, though. Want to hit the bags tomorrow? Might help. Yeah, might help. But even as I sent the message, I knew nothing was going to help. This wasn't the kind of problem you could punch your way through. This required strategy, patience, and a willingness to play the game by new rules. Linda wanted to treat our marriage like a corporate takeover? Fine. She was about to learn that the tattoo guy knew a thing or two about hostile negotiations. The next morning arrived gray and unforgiving, like most mornings in our corner of New England. I'd managed maybe 2 hours of sleep, but adrenaline kept me sharp as I made coffee and waited for the storm to hit. It didn't take long. My phone exploded at 7:30. Linda's ringtone cut through the kitchen silence like a fire alarm. I let it ring 4 times before answering, savoring each electronic shriek. Sam. Her voice was ice over broken glass. What did you do? Good morning to you too, honey. How was your retreat? Don't play games with me. My sister just called. She got some very interesting emails this morning. I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one Flora had made me in art class 3 years ago. It was lopsided and the handle was too small, but it held coffee just fine. Must have been quite a conversation. You sent private messages to my entire contact list. My mother saw those pictures, Sam. My mother. The raw fury in her voice should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it felt like validation. For months, I'd been the fool husband, clueless and trusting while she built her secret life. Now she knew how it felt to have your private world ripped open for everyone to see. Funny thing about private messages, I said. They're only private until someone decides to share them. You violated my privacy. You hacked into my account. Your account that you left open on our shared computer, the one you bought with our joint credit card, that account? Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, calculating damage, planning countermoves. Linda had always been strategic, thinking 3 steps ahead in every situation. It's what made her good at sales and terrible at marriage. I want you out of the house, she said finally. It's my house too. My name's on the deed. We'll see about that. I'm calling my lawyer. The line went quiet. I set the phone down and took a long sip of coffee, wondering how many years of my life had just evaporated in a 5-minute conversation. Flora appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for school. She looked between me and the silent phone with the kind of careful attention kids develop when their parents start acting like strangers. "That was Mom," I said. I figured. She sounded angry. "Yeah, she's pretty upset about something I did." Flora grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and stuffed it into her backpack. "Are you upset about something she did?" Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. "Yeah, I am." She nodded like this confirmed something she'd already suspected. "Mrs. Patterson's parents got divorced last year. She said the worst part was when they started using her to spy on each other." The comment hit me like a slap. Was that what I was doing? Turning my daughter into a casualty of my war with Linda? "Flora, I need you to know something. Whatever happens between your mom and me, it's not your fault. And it's not your job to fix it or choose sides or carry messages back and forth. You're the kid. We're the adults. We're supposed to handle this stuff." She looked at me for a long moment, then surprised me by smiling. "Thanks, Dad. Most parents don't say that." After Flora left for school, I drove to Ink and Steel to open the shop. The morning routine usually cleared my head, checking supplies, reviewing appointments, setting up stations. But today felt different. Everything looked the same, but the world had shifted overnight. My first client was supposed to be Jennifer Walsh, a nurse getting her first tattoo to celebrate finishing her degree. She was scheduled for 9 o'clock. At 9:15, she still hadn't shown. At 9:30, my phone rang. "Sam, it's Jennifer. I'm really sorry, but I need to cancel today." "No problem. Want to reschedule?" A pause. "Actually, I think I'm going to go with someone else. Thanks anyway." She hung up before I could ask why. A cold finger of dread traced down my spine. My 10 o'clock canceled 20 minutes later. Same apologetic tone, same vague excuse. By noon, I'd lost 4 appointments and hadn't booked a single walk-in. That's when Donnie showed up. He filled the doorway like a friendly mountain, all shoulders and graying beard. Donnie had been a boxer in his younger days, good enough to go professional if he'd been willing to take the hits to his brain. Instead, he'd opened a gym and spent his time training kids who reminded him of us at that age. "Heard you had some excitement last night," he said, settling into the client chair. "News travels fast. Small city, big mouths. Linda's been making calls." The dread in my stomach crystallized into something harder. "What kind of calls?" "The kind where she tells people you're unstable, dangerous, says you hacked her computer and sent threatening messages to her friends." I set down the tattoo gun I'd been cleaning. "I forwarded her own messages. Her words, not mine. I know that. You know that. But half the city just knows what Linda's telling them, and she's very convincing when she wants to be." The pieces clicked together, the canceled appointments, the sudden change in how people treated me. Linda wasn't just defending herself, she was going on the offensive. "She's trying to destroy my business." "Looks like it, and it's working. 3 of my gym members asked me if you were really as crazy as Linda says." I laughed, but it came out bitter. 15 years of marriage, and this is how it ends. Not with lawyers or counselors, or even a decent fight. With a whisper campaign designed to make me look like a psychopath. Donnie leaned forward. "Sam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Are you planning to do anything stupid? Define stupid. Anything that gives Linda ammunition. Anything that makes her look like the victim and you look like the crazy ex-husband." I thought about it. The honest answer was that I'd been fantasizing about revenge since the moment I heard Greg's voice on Linda's phone. Nothing violent or illegal, just the kind of poetic justice that would make them both understand the cost of betrayal. "I'm not going to hurt anyone," I said finally. "That's not what I asked. I'm not going to do anything that lands me in prison or gives Linda custody of Flora. Beyond that, I'm not making any promises." Donnie studied my face like he was reading a map of dangerous territory. You know what your problem is, Sam? You're too smart for your own good. Smart people think they can outsmart the system. But the system doesn't care how clever you are. It only cares about who has the better lawyer. Linda's not the only one who can play dirty. No, but she's better at it than you are. She's been practicing in corporate boardrooms for years. You fix motorcycles and draw pictures on people's skin. This isn't a fair fight. I wanted to argue, but Donnie had a point. Linda lived in a world of office politics and strategic manipulation. She knew how to smile while sliding a knife between your ribs, how to destroy someone's reputation with carefully chosen words and strategic leaks. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the tattoo guy. Maybe it's not a fair fight, I said, but it's the only fight I've got. Donnie sighed and stood up. Just remember, Sam, winning isn't worth it if you lose everything else in the process. After he left, I sat alone in my empty shop, surrounded by the artwork that had taken me years to create. Flash sheets covered the walls, skulls and roses, eagles and anchors, all the classic designs that never went out of style. In the corner sat my portfolio, leather-bound and thick with photographs of my best work. This place was more than a business. It was proof that I could build something lasting, something beautiful. Linda might have the corporate job and the college degree, but I had this, my hands, my art, my reputation, and she was trying to take it all away. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard about your situation. Might have some information you'd find interesting. Meet me at Murphy's tonight at 8. Come alone. I stared at the message, wondering who would contact me like this and what they might know. In a small city, secrets had a way of multiplying like bacteria in warm water. Someone always saw something, heard something, remembered something that could change everything. At 8 o'clock, I'd find out what that something was. Murphy's bar looked exactly like what it was. A neighborhood dive that had been serving the same crowd for 30 years. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting red shadows on the wet pavement. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke that had soaked into the wood paneling despite the smoking ban. I spotted her immediately. Danielle Morrison sat in a corner booth, nursing a martini and checking her phone. Linda's best friend since college, the kind of woman who collected secrets like some people collected stamps. She worked in real estate and had the predatory smile that came with the territory. Sam. She stood up as I approached, offering a perfectly manicured hand. Thanks for coming. Danielle, this is unexpected. We sat across from each other like negotiators in a hostage situation. She was dressed for success in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Everything about her screamed money and ambition, from her highlighted hair to her designer handbag. I suppose you're wondering why I asked you here. The thought had crossed my mind. She took a sip of her martini, buying time. Linda and I have been friends for a long time. I've seen her through 3 job changes, 2 miscarriages, and more relationship drama than I care to remember. Get to the point, Danielle. The point is that I care about her, which is why I'm here. I signaled the bartender for a beer. If you're here to defend Linda's honor, you're about 6 months too late. I'm not here to defend anyone. I'm here because Linda is making a mistake, a big one, and she's too proud to see it. The beer arrived, cold and bitter. I took a long pull while studying Danielle's face. She had the kind of features that looked good in professional headshots. Sharp cheekbones, calculating eyes, a mouth that could smile while delivering bad news. What kind of mistake? Greg Morrison isn't who she thinks he is. He's not going to leave his wife for Linda. He's not going to ride off into the sunset with her. He's using her, and when this whole thing blows up, he'll throw her under the bus to save his own career. And you know this how? Danielle reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital recorder. Because I've been documenting everything. Insurance, you might call it. She pressed play. Greg's voice filled the space between us, tinny but clear through the device's small speaker. Linda's getting too attached. She keeps talking about us being together permanently, leaving our spouses, starting over. I never promised her that. Another voice, male but younger. So what's the plan? Keep things going until the Henderson contract closes. I need her focused on work. After that, I'll find a reason to transfer her to another division. Clean break, no drama. What if she doesn't go quietly? She will. I've got enough on her to make things very uncomfortable if she decides to make waves. The expense account irregularities, the client information she's been sharing, the time she's been spending on personal calls during work hours. HR would have a field day. The recording stopped. Danielle slipped the device back into her purse like she was holstering a weapon. Where did you get this? Greg's assistant is my cousin. She's been worried about what she's been seeing at the office. Greg's not exactly subtle about his extracurricular activities. I drank my beer and tried to process what I'd just heard. Linda wasn't just having an affair. She was being set up for a fall by someone who saw her as disposable. Why are you telling me this? Because Linda won't listen to me. She thinks she's in love. She thinks Greg is going to solve all her problems and give her the life she deserves. She's about to destroy her marriage, her relationship with Flora, and her career for a man who's already planning to dump her. So you want me to what exactly? Warn her? Save her from herself? Danielle's laugh was sharp as broken glass. God, no. Linda made her choice. She's been lying to you for months, manipulating Flora and turning your friends against you. I don't think she deserves saving. Then what do you want? I want you to use this information wisely. Greg Morrison has been playing games with people's lives for years. He's hurt a lot of women, destroyed a lot of marriages. Maybe it's time someone played games with him. She finished her martini and stood up. I'll email you the full recording. What you do with it is up to you. Danielle, wait. Why are you really doing this? You and Linda have been friends forever. She paused at the edge of the booth, and for just a moment, her polished facade cracked. Because 3 years ago, Greg Morrison tried the same thing with me. I was married then too, thought I was in love, ready to throw away everything for a man who saw me as a temporary diversion. The only difference is I figured out what he was before it was too late. Linda doesn't know? Linda doesn't know a lot of things. She's been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder that she forgot to watch where she was stepping. After Danielle left, I sat in the bar nursing my beer and thinking about the recording. The smart play would be to take the information to Linda, show her what kind of man she was destroying her marriage for. Maybe she'd come to her senses, realize what she was throwing away. But I wasn't feeling particularly smart or forgiving. Linda had made her choice when she decided to sneak around behind my back. She'd made it again when she started poisoning people against me, trying to destroy my business and my reputation. She wanted to play hardball? Fine. But she was about to learn that the tattoo guy had been studying the game longer than she thought. My phone buzzed with an email from Danielle. The full recording was 47 minutes long, a comprehensive breakdown of Greg's plans for Linda and several other women in the office. It was a masterclass in manipulation, delivered in the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. I forwarded the file to my personal email and then deleted it from my phone. Information like this was dangerous, the kind of thing that could destroy lives if it fell into the wrong hands. Good thing I had exactly the right hands for the job. Outside Murphy's, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under the streetlights. This neighborhood looked different at night, older, more honest somehow. During the day, people pretended to be respectable, but after dark, the masks came off. I walked to my truck, already planning my next move. Greg Morrison thought he was playing chess, while everyone else was playing checkers. He was about to discover that some of us had been playing a completely different game all along. The next morning brought the kind of autumn sunshine that made everything look deceptively peaceful. I opened Ink and Steel early, not because I had appointments, those had mysteriously dried up, but because I needed the familiar routine to keep my hands busy while my mind worked. At 9:30, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Flora's school. "Mr. Thompson, this is Principal Martinez. I'm calling about Flora." My stomach dropped. "Is she hurt?" "No, nothing like that, but we had an incident this morning. Flora got into an altercation with another student. She's in my office now." "I'll be right there." The drive to Flora's school took 10 minutes that felt like hours. I found her sitting in the principal's office, arms crossed, staring at the floor with the kind of stubborn expression I recognized from my own mirror. "Flora, you okay?" She looked up, and I saw something in her eyes that made my chest tight. Hurt. Anger. The look of someone who'd been pushed too far. "Madison Parker said you were crazy. She said her mom heard from Mrs. Chen that you threatened to hurt Mom, and that's why she had to stay at a hotel." The pieces clicked. Madison Parker's mother was one of Linda's tennis partners. Mrs. Chen ran the dry cleaner where Linda took her work clothes. The Whisper Network was alive and well, spreading Linda's version of events like a virus through the community. "What did you tell Madison?" "I told her she was a liar and her mom was a gossip. Then I pushed her." Principal Martinez cleared his throat. "Flora, we've talked about using words instead of physical responses to conflict." "Sometimes words aren't enough," Flora said, and I heard myself in her voice. I spent 20 minutes in damage control mode, apologizing to the principal and promising that Flora would write a letter of apology to Madison. But as we walked to my truck, I felt a surge of pride alongside the parental concern. You know you can't push people, right? Even when they're saying things that aren't true? I know. But Dad, people are saying terrible things about you. Mrs. Patterson asked me if I felt safe at home. Safe, like you're some kind of monster. We sat in the truck outside the school, and I tried to figure out how to explain adult warfare to a 14-year-old who still believed the world was supposed to be fair. Your mom is scared and angry, so she's trying to make me look bad. It's not right, but it's what people do sometimes when they're hurt. Are you going to make her look bad too? The question hung in the air like smoke. The honest answer was yes. I was planning exactly that. But looking at Flora's serious face, I wondered what kind of man I was becoming. I'm going to protect myself and you. Sometimes that means fighting back. She nodded like this made sense to her. Just don't become someone I don't recognize, okay? That afternoon, I put the first part of my plan into motion. Greg Morrison's wife was named Patricia, and according to her social media profiles, she volunteered at the animal shelter on Thursday afternoons. I found her there, cleaning kennels and looking like someone who'd never had a dishonest thought in her life. "Mrs. Morrison? I'm Sam Thompson. I think we need to talk." She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of wholesome prettiness that aged well. Her wedding ring caught the fluorescent light as she set down the spray bottle she'd been using. "I don't think I know you. My wife works with your husband, Linda Thompson." Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed quickly by something that might have been dread. "Oh, you know about the affair." It wasn't a question. Patricia Morrison had the look of a woman who'd been pretending not to see the obvious for months. Her shoulders sagged like she'd been holding up a weight that had finally become too heavy. I suspected. Greg's been working late a lot, taking weekend trips for conferences that never seemed to generate any business. And he's been different, distracted, guilty. I pulled out my phone and played 30 seconds of Danielle's recording. Patricia's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, hurt, anger, and finally a kind of grim determination. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 months, maybe longer." She sat down on a bench next to the dog runs, looking suddenly exhausted. "We have 2 kids, 8 and 10. They think their father is a hero." "I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy to hear." "No, I'm glad you told me. I've been making excuses for him, convincing myself I was being paranoid. It's almost a relief to know I wasn't crazy." We talked for another 20 minutes. Patricia was smarter than her husband gave her credit for, and angrier than she'd probably ever been in her life. By the time I left the animal shelter, Greg Morrison's home life was about to become very complicated. That evening, I drove to the office building where Linda worked. The parking garage was mostly empty, just a few dedicated souls pulling late nights or having affairs with their bosses. Linda's car was in its usual spot on the 3rd level. I didn't vandalize it or leave threatening notes. Instead, I did something much more subtle. I placed a small GPS tracker under the rear bumper, the kind anxious parents use to monitor teenage drivers. Completely legal, since Linda was still technically my wife, and the car was registered in both our names. Knowledge is power, and I was about to know exactly where my wife went when she thought nobody was watching. The tracker connected to an app on my phone, showing Linda's location in real time. Over the next 3 days, I watched her digital footprint like a detective studying evidence. Most of her movements were predictable, home to work, to the gym, to the grocery store. But there were anomalies, lunch meetings that lasted 3 hours, evening stops at addresses that didn't match any legitimate business. On Saturday, the tracker led me to a coffee shop in the Arts District, the kind of place that served $15 lattes to people who thought spending money was the same as having taste. Through the window, I watched Linda and Greg huddled over a small table, having what looked like an intense conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. Greg was leaning back, arms crossed, the picture of casual dismissal. Linda was leaning forward, animated, desperate. She was trying to convince him of something, and he wasn't buying it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. You'll want to see this. D." Danielle had sent me a series of photographs taken with a telephoto lens. Greg and Linda in the coffee shop, but also Greg with 2 other women over the past week. Different restaurants, different women, same predatory smile. The final photo showed Greg's calendar, apparently photographed from his assistant's computer screen. Next to Linda's name was a note. "Phase out after Henderson deal closes. Transfer to Portland office." Linda thought she was fighting for her future with Greg. She had no idea she was already being written out of his story. I sat in my truck, watching my wife plead with a man who was planning to discard her like yesterday's newspaper. Part of me felt sorry for her. She'd thrown away 15 years of marriage for someone who saw her as a temporary convenience. But mostly, I felt like I was watching justice in slow motion. My phone rang. Flora's number. "Dad, can you pick me up? I'm at Jessica's house, but her mom is acting weird around me. I think she heard something about you and Mom." "I'll be right there." As I drove across town to collect my daughter from another awkward situation created by Linda's scorched earth campaign, I realized that my wife had made a critical error in judgment. She'd assumed I would take her betrayal quietly, that I would be the passive victim in her dramatic reinvention. She was about to learn that the tattoo guy had been underestimated for the last time. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel possible. I opened Ink and Steel to find 3 messages on the answering machine, actual customers wanting appointments. Word was getting around that Linda's version of events might not be the whole truth. The first sign that my plan was working came at 10:30, when my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Morrison. "Confronted Greg last night. He's staying at a hotel. Thank you for giving me the truth." The second sign came an hour later when Linda called. "Sam, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Meet me at the house tonight. 8 o'clock. Flora's staying at my sister's." The line went quiet. I stared at my phone, wondering what had changed. Linda hadn't wanted to be in the same room with me for weeks. Something had shifted in her carefully constructed world. At 7:30, I drove through our old neighborhood, past houses where we'd attended barbecues and birthday parties, where Flora had played with kids who were now treating her like she carried some kind of disease. The leaves were turning, painting the suburban streets in shades of gold and red that would have been beautiful if I'd been in the mood to appreciate beauty. Linda was waiting in the living room, still dressed in her work clothes, but looking less polished than usual. Her makeup was smudged, her hair slightly messed, like she'd been running her hands through it. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. Fear. "Greg's wife knows," she said without preamble. I figured she might. "Did you tell her?" I sat down in the chair across from her, the same chair where I'd read bedtime stories to Flora and watched countless movies with Linda back when we were still pretending to be happy. I showed her some information that came my way. She deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. Linda's laugh was sharp and bitter. "What kind of man? You mean the kind who has affairs? Like I'm any better?" "No, Linda. I mean the kind who collects married women like trophies and then throws them away when he gets bored. The kind who's been planning to transfer you to the Portland office so he can move on to his next conquest without any messy complications." The color drained from her face. "That's not true." I pulled out my phone and played a section of Danielle's recording. Greg's voice filled our living room, casual and cold as he discussed Linda like she was a business problem to be solved. Linda listened in silence, her expression cycling through disbelief, recognition, and finally a kind of hollow devastation. When the recording ended, she sat perfectly still for a long moment. "How long have you known?" "A few days, long enough to understand what you were throwing our marriage away for." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The question caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, denial, maybe even violence. I hadn't expected this quiet defeat. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed it was just the jealous husband trying to poison you against your lover?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Linda, Greg Morrison has been playing this game for years. You're not his first affair, and you won't be his last. The only difference is that you burned down your marriage for him." "I know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He told me today. Said his wife was making things complicated, that we needed to cool things off for a while. He suggested I might be happier in a different division, somewhere with more opportunities for advancement." "The Portland office?" "The Portland office." She looked around our living room like she was seeing it for the first time. "I destroyed everything for nothing." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Two people who'd once loved each other trying to figure out how they'd ended up as enemies. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking and the distant sound of traffic on the main road. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal neighborhood where normal people were probably having normal problems. "Sam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay. Is there any way we can fix this? Any way to go back to how things were before?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had already burned the house down. I looked at Linda, really looked at her, and tried to remember the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. She was still there, buried under layers of ambition and disappointment, and the kind of compromise that happens when people lose sight of what actually matters. But she was also the woman who'd spent months lying to my face, who'd tried to destroy my business and turn my daughter against me when her affair was exposed. She was the woman who'd chosen Greg Morrison over 15 years of marriage and family. "I don't think so, Linda. Too much has happened. Too many things have been said and done that can't be taken back." She nodded like she'd expected that answer. "What happens now?" "Now, we figure out how to end this without destroying Flora in the process. We get divorced like adults instead of like enemies. We try to salvage some dignity from the wreckage." "And Greg?" I smiled, and it wasn't a particularly nice expression. "Greg's about to discover that actions have consequences. His wife is filing for divorce and taking half of everything he owns. His boss received some very interesting recordings this afternoon that raise serious questions about his professional conduct. And I suspect his reputation in this city is about to become very uncomfortable." Linda studied my face. You're not the same man I married. No, I'm not. That man was naive enough to trust people who didn't deserve it. This man knows better. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where we'd lived for 8 years. I never meant for things to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you or Flora. But you did hurt us, and when I tried to defend myself, you tried to hurt us more. That's not something I can forget or forgive. I know. She turned back to me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just about getting caught, but about all of it. You deserved better. Yes, I did. Linda walked me to the door, and for a moment, we stood there like strangers who'd shared an elevator ride. Then, she surprised me by reaching out and touching my arm. Take care of yourself, Sam. And take care of Flora. She's going to need you to be the stable parent. I will. I drove home through streets that looked different now, like I was seeing them through new eyes. The GPS tracker showed Linda's car still at the house, not moving toward some secret rendezvous. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where my wife was and what she was doing. The next morning, I woke up to find 3 new appointments booked online and a voice message from a client I'd thought I'd lost. Word was spreading that the crazy tattoo guy might not be so crazy after all. My phone buzzed with a text from Donnie. Heard Greg Morrison got fired yesterday. Something about inappropriate workplace relationships and misuse of company resources. Funny how these things work out. I smiled and poured myself coffee in Flora's lopsided mug. Outside, the October sun was burning through the morning fog, promising a clear day ahead. The war was over. Now came the harder work of building something new from what remained. But for the first time in months, I felt like that might actually be possible. 6 months later, I stood in the expanded space of ink and steel, watching my newest artist put the finishing touches on a client's shoulder piece. Business had more than recovered. It had thrived. Turns out people respect someone who fights back when cornered, as long as they fight smart instead of dirty. Flora walked in after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking more like Linda every day, but with something harder in her eyes. She'd learned lessons about trust and loyalty that most kids don't need to learn until they're adults. How was your day? I asked. Good. Mom called. She's settling in okay in Portland. Linda had taken the transfer after all, deciding that a fresh start 3,000 miles away was better than trying to rebuild her reputation in a city that had heard all her secrets. She called Flora every week and sent birthday cards on time, but she'd become more like a distant relative than a mother. You okay with that? Flora shrugged. I miss who she used to be, but I don't miss who she became. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Morrison. Kids are doing great. Thank you again for everything. You saved my life. Patricia and I had become friends of a sort, 2 people who'd survived the same kind of betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. She'd gotten a good divorce settlement and started her own business. Greg had moved to another state, his career in ruins, and his reputation destroyed by his own recorded words. Sometimes justice comes from the courts, sometimes it comes from karma, and sometimes it comes from people who refuse to be victims. I looked around my shop, at the art on the walls and the clients in the chairs, at my daughter doing homework at the front desk and my employees who'd stuck with me through the worst of it. This wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. And for the first time in years, it felt like enough.